prijetnje novinarki koja je pratila slučaj Epstein i zlostavljanje djece, znači čime se ti zločinci služe, to je nevjerojatno. Poslušajte ovu priču.
The sorts of pressures that you came under as a journalist reporting on this case. So this is, at a time where, you're one of a number of journalists that are reporting on this. In fact, arguably, this was the trial of the century. Everyone wanted to be at this case. But you had some rather unusual encounters during your time writing this book and reporting. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely, yeah. And again, I didn't expect this to the degree that I experienced it going into the case. But now, kind of 5 or 6 years later, I can see that it should have been very obvious to me that these kind of that I would have these threats and this kind of intimidation because, as we know, and as I'm sure we will talk about, there are a lot of people who were involved in this criminal ring in some way, whether in actual criminal wrongdoing or enabling or aiding and abetting, who have never faced any consequences. A lot of those people have a lot of money and they have a lot to lose. And they really don't want to be found out. And they can throw a lot of money at the project of not being found out. So one example of this is that I went to Palm Beach in Florida, obviously where one of Jeffrey Epstein's houses was. And it was a really, really big part of this sex trafficking ring. And I went there to meet a woman named Carolyn, who testified against Ghislaine Maxwell at her trial. Carolyn's testimony was unbelievably powerful. I spoke to jurors after who said that it was really important to their decision to convict Ghislaine Maxwell. And I just reached out to her and asked if she would be willing to talk. And surprised that she'd never spoken to a journalist before. But surprisingly, she said yes, so I flew out there to see her. And the night that I landed, she got a visit on her doorstep from someone who said, "Hi, we know that there's a journalist here arriving in Palm Beach." They knew what time I was arriving. And they said, "We know you're planning to speak to her. Here's $5,000 to not do that." Carolyn, who's very, very sadly since passed away, was an incredibly fearless woman. So she said, "Get off my property and I will not take your $5,000. And it turned out that either that person or people associated with him were following me for the whole time that I was there. So there was a restaurant opposite the hotel that I was staying in where I would eat and take notes and things like that. And after a few days, this man walked past my table and I was kind of furiously taking notes. And he said, "Oh, when that book is published, I want a signed copy." And I looked at him and I just said, "Oh, I'm just writing in my journal." And he was like, "No, you're writing a book about Jeffrey Epstein." And I was like, "Okay, who are you?" And he sat down, so I was in a kind of corner table, and he sat down next to me, so kind of locking me into my position. It was really, really close to me. And at first, he tried a couple of different things. At first he said, "Oh, I know one of Jeff's pilots, so I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you. Do you want to come meet him? He's on the airstrip right now. It's 11:30 at night."
Znači, to je takav ring, ljudi moji, da će luđak biti spreman pokrenut treći svjetski rat da se ne sazna ko je sve na toj listi u tim fajlovima. Znači, to su političari, to su bankari, onaj ljigavi princ Andrew, ma ko zna koje se, onaj smrdljivi Ehud Barak je na toj listi. Znači, on se iživljavao na toj jadnoj Viktoriji koja se ubila, navodno. 42-3 godine žena imala i 3 djece. Iživljavao se toliko na njoj da je žena bila, znači sva je bila krvava koliko se đubre iživljavalo na njoj. Dijete od 16-17 godina. Zamisli da je to tvoja kćer, tvoja sestra. Strašno.
Wasn't born yesterday. I'm not coming with you to an airstrip at 11:30 at night. Absolutely not. And then he became very aggressive, very sexually aggressive, and very threatening. And it was very hard to get away from him. He offered me that same $5,000 that he had offered Carolyn the night before or a few days before. And eventually I had to get the restaurant staff to help me, and they removed him. And then we waited for a while because they could see that his car was still parked outside, you know, black Escalade. There was a few of them parked outside and that he wasn't leaving. And the staff, after, like, because I was just kind of saying, oh, this person's bothering me. I didn't tell the staff anything else. But then when he wasn't leaving, the staff said, what are you doing in Palm Beach? And I told them, and they said, okay, this isn't safe. We're going to take you out the back. They snuck me out the back. They told me the next day that the cars waited for me for hours. And, you know, there was a similar car that turned up at my Airbnb the next day, and they were just kind of tailing me around the whole time I was there. And I've, you know, had someone in Palm Beach hack into my phone, and not take any of my money because that's not what they're in my phone for. But luckily everything in my phone is very, very well protected, so they didn't get access to anything. But certainly, and you know, I know a lot of journalists with these kinds of stories, so it is certainly true that there are people out there willing to hire and spend a lot of money on, you know, fixers or private investigators to chase journalists who are trying to report this story, and to threaten them, because as I said, so far they've remained unscathed, and they would really like it to stay that way, and they happen to be some of the richest people on earth, so they have money to spend on trying to silence me.
Now, call me naive, but this was the trial of one of the biggest sex trafficking rings in...
Znači, ovo je zastrašujuće. Ta zmijurina, prokleta, sotonska, židovsko-cionistička, pedofilski taj krug, ma ima ih, znači, zna se da Maxwell i Jeffrey, oni su bili agenti Mossadovi. Tako da, ljudi moji, to je takav shithole, takva septička rupa. Ja samo molim Boga da sva istina izađe van. Evo, samo to molim Boga, jer ovo što rade je zastrašujuće. Hakiraju telefone, prisluškuju telefone, znam to iz iskustva. Tako da neće vam proći, uzalud se trudite, istina će se saznat, sad je doba razotkrivanja, Bog vas razotkriva. Tako da, eto, zašto naši mediji ne izvještavaju o ovome? Gdje mi živimo? U Sjevernoj Koreji, kaj je ovo? Niti o Gazi se ništa ne govori, o Sudanu se ništa ne govori. Zašto se ne govori o tome da Hrvatska podupire genocid u Gazi? Ne u moje ime. 1000 puta ću to ponoviti, ne u moje ime. I to će izaći van isto u javnost. Šta se radi i šta Hrvatska ima šurovat sa tim Izraelom?